Hey friends, welcome back to Susie on the Farm. I am Susie, your resident crafter here, and one of my favorite things to do is go to the thrift store and find those unwanted, out-of-date items, bring them back here to my studio, and turn them into one-of-a-kind pieces of art. I do that using so many of these craft supplies that you see me use here, and I sell the items and the craft supplies on susieonthefarm.com, as well as here in my vintage store in Coleman, Alabama. Today we've got 4 new thrift flip projects that I can't wait to show you guys. So let's go ahead and get started. So I always pick up crosses. I have an entire wall here in the store, and periodically when they sell, I always need something new to put out. I found this one for $1, and when I was pulling the grapes off, of course, the whole thing fell apart, but that was no problem. I glued it back, stapled it back together, and then we are going to upcycle. Now, I really liked the wood tone on this, so I really kind of wanted to keep that really rustic barn wood kind of look. I'm using Fusion in the color Chateau, and I'm not doing full coverage. I'm not dry brushing because I'm not wiping off the excess paint. However, I'm just doing a very light, messy coat just to get a little bit of paint on there. Once my paint was dry, I even took some sandpaper, roughed up all those edges, and went over all of it to see some more of that wood grain. And I have the Winter Botanist Transfer book here. This is from the holiday collection that was just released, I think, in September. This one is full of botanicals. It's got labels, all kinds of greenery. So I thought that it would go perfect with this rustic little cross. I cut out a few pieces to kind of see what I wanted. I know I want a bird on there. Just trying to figure out which way. And y'all, I'm sorry about that glare from my light. I think I turned that ring light off in a minute, but even my fluorescent lights in this room tend to do that sometime. So I did decide on this bird nest, and it fit perfectly in the center of my cross. And because I use Fusion paint, which has a built-in sealer, rubbing on these Iron Orchid Design transfers is so easy once your paint is dried. I've never ever had a fail with transfers over Fusion paint, so I love to use it when I'm doing transfers. So I got this one transferred down, and I absolutely could have stopped there, but if you've been watching my channel a while, you know that I am a transfer hoarder. I have got so many transfers that I need to use up, and I promised myself that I would this year, so I am keeping on going. So I actually found another bird that was the exact same as the other bird. So I put that one on, and then I just filled in all the other areas with a few more greenery and that cute little label at the top. And if something wrapped around the side, I also wrapped the transfer around the side just to finish it off. I think we could never go wrong with a butterfly, so I added one more, and once I got all the transfers like I wanted on this cross, I sealed this up with some clear wax. In this case, I am using one of the Fusion scented waxes. This one is Hills of Tuscany, and I love the smell of it. And I love how this cross turned out. It is very rustic, and I think this could actually be a year-round piece of decor. Let me know what you guys think. For project number 2, I picked this birdhouse tissue holder box out of my stash. It's been there a while. I think I only paid like $1 for it, and it did have a cute little painting on it, but we're going to update it some. And to do that, I am using the Iron Orchid Designs Felicity mold. This is one of the 5x7s, the really deeper molds. I could have used resin in this, and I'm kind of wishing that I had, and I'll show you guys a little bit later, but I wanted to go ahead and use some clay, so I'm using Iron Orchid Designs clay, and I dusted my mold with cornstarch first. Just makes it a little bit easier turning them out, and all the molds have this little micro rim around the edges, so it makes it very easy to clean up those edges. And then if you have a little bit of extra, you can clean that up after you take it out. And to remove them, I just turn it upside down. I use gravity to bend the mold. The molds are silicone, they're easy to bend. I bend the mold and pull it out very easily. Once I got them all made up, I began kind of gluing them on how I liked. And I knew I wanted to use this little, I don't know what it is, a laurel or a swag or something. I wanted to use it on the roof line. So I'm using Tite Bond quick and thick glue, and I'm using my fingers and a brush to just spread it all over the back of the mold. And this clay is still very moldable right now, so I have to be careful, but I also have to push all those corners down to make sure that everything is making good contact. But I do not want to mess up any of those beautiful details in my mold. So I'm just being rather gentle here and placing them all on there. And I just kind of randomly place them how I thought would look nice with the glue. And then I let it sit for maybe about 30 minutes while I was working on another project. And by that time, that glue is set up enough, and there's a little bit of crust over the clay where I can paint it. I do like to paint my molds when they are still wet. That slows down that drying process just enough to keep them from cracking or shrinking too much, which you will get from time to time with your molds, especially these thicker ones. I am using a pointed sash Stallmeister brush here. It's just easy to get into all those extra little details because, again, I'm having to be very, very careful when painting this so I don't mess up all those beautiful details on this mold. And the color that I painted it is Rose Water. This is a fusion mineral paint. It's an all-in-one, has a built-in primer, sealer, self-leveler. So easy to use and one of my absolute favorite paints. I got out a bunch of my floral transfers, and they may come from different packs. I believe most of them come from Saint Germain, maybe, or Menagerie. Probably Saint Germain. I just picked a few colors that I thought looked good together. Not really, you know, I don't want them to be matchy-matchy, but I do want them to be somewhat similar. And I placed them all over this. Like I said, I am no longer hoarding my transfers. And I did have to cut them up into some smaller pieces. You do not have to put your transfers on like they show them on the book. You can cut them up any way you wish. And that's exactly what I did with this. I wrapped some around the corners. I butted them right up to my molds just to give it like that 3D kind of effect. I've got the molds that are risen, and they're going to be pink. And then I've got all these different flowers around them. I did the roof, the back, everything. At some point, I think when I was putting a transfer on the back, I wasn't paying attention, and I squished my molds a little too much on the front. And I got really mad at myself, and I thought I'm just going to scrap this entire project because I don't like it now. But I do also like to point out when I make mistakes to you guys, so hopefully you do not make those same mistakes. It's not terrible, and I think I salvaged it. To finish it off, anytime you're using a mold, it is a great idea to use some wax, because that wax gets down in all those details and stays in those cracks. And then when you wipe back on the top, it just gives so much dimension. And you can see there where I messed up a few of my details. But it's not bad, and maybe had I not even pointed it out to you guys, you would not have noticed it, but I am a little hard on myself, so I tend to notice these things. But I did want to show you this project because it is so pretty. So I haven't done a rolling pin in a while, and the reason for that being that they're very hard to find at a decent price. I did, however, find a few recently, so I decided to upcycle this one. To begin with, I am putting white paint in the center because I am going to decoupage. I'm using DIY in the color White Swan. I let it dry, and I had just this little piece of ledger from Typography Love, which is a recycled decoupage paper. And by the way, all of this is available on my website, susieonthefarm.com. That's SUSIE, if you want to do your own upcycles. I am using DIY liquid patina as my decoupage medium here, and this piece barely fit. I mean, there is a little crack where the paper doesn't quite meet up, and I am misting my paper for two reasons. For one, it makes it really easy to smooth out any wrinkles with my paintbrush, and two, it also stretches those fibers, and I was hoping that it would stretch them just enough to reach the other piece of paper because I really wanted to use this. I love that antique ledger look. I did still have just a little bit of space, and as I'm watching this video and doing a voiceover, you cannot even see it in this video, but I could see it in person, and it was bothering me, so I started thinking about what I could do to disguise that teeny tiny little strip there between the papers. So I got it all decoupaged down, and then I let it dry. Once it was dry, I came back and I sanded off the excess there on the ends of my rolling pin with sandpaper, and I tried to go into a downward motion. I thought about taking that little piece there and covering the crack, but I would rather see the crack than overlapping papers because that is always very noticeable. So I didn't do that. But once it was dry and I cleaned up all the edges, I'm going to paint the handles with black, and I am using Little Black Dress. This is a DIY paint. This is a clay-based, water-soluble paint. It is very easily distressed, and that is what I'm going to do with these handles. It took one coat of paint, and I painted both the handles with the Little Black Dress. I let it dry. I used my little sanding finger sander there, and also a wet baby wipe to distress back this black on the ends of these handles. And then I also, on my table there, this is a new product to me, I had some of the Sweet Pickens dark oil wax. When I went on my retreat this last weekend to Wisconsin, Sonnet had given us these little samples for one of our project, and I brought it home in my bag. And I'm so glad I did because this stuff is hard to find in stock, and now I have at least a little bit to work with, but this stuff is pretty cool. So I put it onto the paint and I let it sit for 10 to 15 minutes, and then I wiped any of the excess back. So I went through my transfers and I found this one from Home Sweet Home, which was the Q3, one of the smaller transfer books, and it is back in stock. Has been out of stock for a while, and it's full of so many little vintage kitchen things you can do. It's just a really great transfer to have. So I'm putting it right over that little crack that you guys cannot see, but it's all I can see. And then I also used a few of the stars from the same transfer pack and just put them around to finish this off. And I sealed everything up one more time on the center there with some white wax, and I think it turned out so lovely, and it goes so good with all my vintage kitchen stuff here on my Hoosier cabinet. I also have some other vintage red handles, so it's a perfect match for all of that. For our last project today, Mom had picked this pumpkin up at a yard sale. I think she paid $1 for it. It is ceramic. I really like the look of it, but as you can see, there was some damage there, so I'm going to go ahead and paint it. To begin with, I'm removing these metal leaves off of it, just really to make it easier to paint. And I will decide if I'm going to put those back on or how I'm going to use those. And I am going to be using some Sweet Pickins milk paint. This is in the color Creamy. This was also in our maker's box that was at the retreat. I do not sell Sweet Pickins milk paint. I have Fusion, and I have a color that is similar to this one, but I don't have Sweet Pickins. But I told myself I need to start using milk paint more often because I love the look that it gives. Now for this one, I did not add any extra bond. The pumpkin's kind of shiny, so I figured that there would be a good bit of chipping and cracking, and that's okay. That's kind of what I'm going for. But if you want full coverage, you can add extra bond to it, and that will help it stick. So I did 2 coats and I dried it with my heat gun in between, and this is what we have, and I am loving it. I just used my hand and I went over and I flaked any loose paint off, and I just left it pretty much as it is. I did take my sander and I sanded over that stem. I want it to stand out just a little bit. I started to not paint it at all, but I decided to go ahead and paint it. So once I got it sanded, I am going to use that dark oil wax again. We did this over a pumpkin mold at the retreat, and I absolutely loved it. It gave it just the right vintage look. It gets into all those cracks, and I will show you guys some close-ups of that here in a minute because it's just absolutely stunning. This one did chip a little bit more than I would have liked, but that's okay. I just went with it. It looks super cool. It looks really old and worn and just that really awesome look. I let the dark oil wax sit on there for about 10 to 15 minutes, and then I came back with 2 paper towels and I wiped any of the excess off. This will seal that paint in, prevent any more chipping off, and look at that. Look at that cracks. I love it. I don't even mind that color coming from underneath it. To finish it off, I did put some white wax over those metal leaves and I hot glued them back on. And I made just a little messy rag bow to put on the top of it. And I can see here it needs a little bit of a haircut, so I may do that. But just look at all this gorgeous detail that this milk paint creates. I'm obsessed with milk paint. I hope that y'all have enjoyed all 4 of the makeovers in today's video, and be sure to leave me a comment. Let me know which one was your favorite. And thank you guys so much for watching. Give me a thumbs up. Make sure you're following. I'm here every Wednesday night, and I will see you again then.